Today's video is about one of the best investments I'm aware of, and the only catch is that in order to be able to make this investment, you have to either have lived in the UK or worked in the UK. So if you haven't lived in the UK and you haven't worked in the UK, don't watch this video, it's just going to make you jealous. Regular RetireJapan members are probably wondering why I'm making this video, because this is something we've covered extensively on the RetireJapan blog. It's one of the most popular topics on the RetireJapan forum, and it seems like it's been done to death, but I keep meeting people who don't know about this. In the last couple of weeks alone, I've had a couple of coaching clients that didn't know about this and weren't doing it. And if you're eligible, you might be leaving hundreds of thousands of pounds on the table. So what is this investment? Let's talk about it. So I first heard about this quite a long time ago. Someone told me about it on Facebook and I didn't listen to them. I thought, there's no way I want to pay into the state pension. That sounds like a terrible idea. I'm not going to get my money back. The pension system is probably not going to be around once I retire. And so I didn't bother looking into it. Fortunately, they persisted. They kept coming back and saying, hey, you really need to look at this. It's a really good deal. And eventually I did. I went in and I looked at it and I ran the numbers and oh my God, it is incredible. So what are voluntary contributions to the UK state pension? Well, it's a fairly unique system. Some countries let you pay into the pension system if you're not living in the country on a voluntary basis. Japan is one of them. You can pay Nenkin contributions from abroad if you're a Japanese citizen and you're not living in Japan. The unique thing about the UK system is that voluntary contributions are incredibly reasonable compared to the amount of pension you might expect to get from them. I get the feeling this is a bit of a loophole. It's kind of an unintended characteristic of how the pension system is set up in the UK. Voluntary contributions tend to be for self-employed people or for people who aren't working. And those people who maybe don't have income, you might expect them to be able to pay in at a reduced rate. Now, the unintended consequence is that if you don't live in the UK, you're also allowed to make these voluntary contributions. And again, it's not based on your income. You just pay the standard rates, and the standard rates are pretty low. So who can pay these voluntary contributions to the UK state pension? Well, there's a couple of conditions. So the very baseline here is that you have to have lived in the UK for at least 3 years, or you have to have paid in or have the equivalent of having paid in to the system for at least 3 years. On top of that, if you want to pay the cheaper class 2 contributions, you have to have worked in the UK immediately before leaving, and you have to have been working while you were living abroad. If you don't meet those conditions, you might be able to pay into the more expensive class 3 contributions. So how much is it going to cost you to pay in? Well, if you're lucky enough to qualify to pay class 2 contributions, these are the cheaper ones, this will cost you £3.50 a week. If you don't qualify for class 2, you might be able to pay class 3, and class 3 contributions cost £17.75 per week. And these are the 2025, 2026 prices. These tend to go up over time with inflation and so on. The UK state system, unlike Japan, which works in months, works in years. So you have to pay a full year in order to get anything from your pension contributions. A full year of class 3 contributions is £182. For class 3, that's £923. So if you pay a full year, you get a year's worth of qualifications towards the state pension. And in order to get a full state pension, you have to pay in for 35 years. Same as Japan, in order to get any pension at all, you have to pay the minimum, which is 10 years. In Japan, it's 120 months. In the UK, you need 10 full years in order to vest and qualify to receive a pension in old age. Now, this probably doesn't seem like such a great idea so far. Why would you want to pay into the UK state pension? Well, the reason this is such a good deal is because the UK state pension is fairly generous. It's much more generous than Nenkin currently is, and the contributions are cheaper. So it's a bit of a no-brainer if you're eligible to pay in and you're fully aware of the potential risks of making this kind of investment. Right now, the UK state pension is a very generous £230 a week. Annually, this is almost £12,000 a year. One reason it's so generous is because of the triple lock system, where the pension goes up by a certain amount each year, which is based on inflation, average earnings, or 2.5% a year, whichever is lowest. And this has meant that the UK state pension has gone up quite a lot recently. Until the triple lock is abolished, then we can expect the UK state pension to continue to go up in the future, making it an even better deal. Now, let's look at some numbers and see if you end up agreeing with me about just how exciting this is. So if you're paying Class 2 voluntary contributions, you're going to end up paying something like a total of £6,300 over a 35-year period, assuming you didn't have any years already. And then in retirement, you're going to get £12,000 a year for life. So your payoff period for these voluntary contributions is about 6 months. It's unbelievably good. I don't know of any other kind of investment that would come anywhere close to this, and it's also a government-backed pension, so it gives you a lot of diversification. Say you have some stock market investments, you have a Japanese government pension, having a UK government pension as well is going to mean that you've got a much more stable kind of multiple income situation here. It's amazing. Even with Class 3, you'd end up paying something like £32,000 and then getting that same £12,000 a year pension. So your break-even period would be just under 3 years. Not quite as good as Class 2, but still a really good investment. Now, I actually came to Japan straight from university, so I wasn't working in the UK before I left, and therefore I didn't qualify to pay Class 2, but I've been paying Class 3 contributions since I found out about this. You are allowed to back pay as well. You can back pay up to 6 years worth of UK state pension currently, and that will probably make sense for a lot of people. Now, there are some potential risks here. The biggest one is political risk. Political risk is maybe a future government changing the rules. Now, I think there's two potential changes that make this slightly risky, one more likely than the other. Now, the more likely scenario that I could see happening is that a future government will basically say, okay, you can't pay in from abroad anymore, which makes sense actually. It does seem like a loophole. It does seem like we're taking advantage a little bit of the system. So I could see this changing in the future. Now, the big risk here would be if you were paying in voluntarily and you didn't have 10 years worth of contributions and the government changed the rules and you weren't allowed to pay in anymore and you never made it to 10 years, you would never get any kind of pension in retirement. And that seems more likely than the next one. Now, the next potential change is that a future government might say, okay, we're not going to pay the UK state pension to people who don't live in the UK. I think this is slightly less likely because the UK state pension is a contributory pension. So you pay in, you qualify to get the pension, and then you get the pension in old age. So now it's possible that a future government might change the rules in that way. I don't think it's going to happen. I am still paying in to my UK state pension on a voluntary basis because I do expect that I'll be able to claim it in retirement. Another risk, but maybe a less important one, if you pay in on a voluntary basis and then you move back to the UK to work, it's possible that you'll end up paying more than you have to. So you only need 35 years to get a full UK state pension. If you're working in the UK, you don't have a choice about paying in, you have to pay in. So it's possible if you paid in while you were abroad and then moved back and continued working, you might hit 35 years but still be working in the UK and therefore paying in to the UK state pension when you didn't need to. This doesn't seem like such a big deal to me. If it's something that's likely to happen to you, you might want to take it into account. So let's talk about some important considerations. The first one is if you have lived or worked in the UK, you may well have some years already. So I came to Japan straight from university, but when I was in school, in secondary school, the rules at the time were that you got credit for your pension for the 2 years of sixth form. so secondary school in the UK. So I had 2 years worth of contributions already just from that. I didn't work at university and I came straight to Japan when I graduated, so I didn't have any other years, but I had 2 years of contributions and I had lived in the UK for at least 3 years. So when I started, I had my 2 years of contributions. I back paid 6 years immediately. I've been paying in ever since. Right now, I have 19 full years paid into the UK state pension out of the maximum 35. That qualifies me right now for £125 a week in UK state pension from the age of 67. However, if I pay in for another 16 years going forward, I would qualify for the maximum state pension. And the maximum state pension at the moment is looking like it's going to be about twice as much as what I'm going to be getting from Nenkin. Between my Nenkin and my wife's Nenkin, my UK state pension, I think that's pretty much going to cover our basic living expenses in retirement. And so any kind of savings or investments, we're just going to be able to spend on discretionary stuff. To go on holiday maybe, to give to family, to go out to nice restaurants and all that kind of stuff. Having that kind of income floor in retirement where you're getting these guaranteed payments every month, that really is going to give us peace of mind in retirement. You can check your pension record, you can find your national insurance number, and all sorts of stuff on gov.uk, which is the UK government's online portal. You do have to register. It can be a bit of a pain to register, but once you're registered, it's fairly easy to use. Now, another important consideration is that the UK state pension, depending on which country you live in, may be increased once you're receiving it in retirement, or it may not. And under the current rules, Japan is one of the countries where the pension will not be increased in once you start receiving it. The way this works is that until you start claiming the pension, or until you reach pension age rather, the pension will go up normally, currently with the triple lock system. In the past it's just been kind of cost of living increases. But once you start receiving it, once you become eligible to receive it, currently age 67, that might go up slightly in the future, it's frozen at that point, and it won't go up. Even if people in the UK or people in countries that do have these increases will see their pension go up every year, living in Japan under the current rules, it wouldn't do that. Now, for me, this isn't such a huge deal because, as we said, you know, the UK pension is much more generous than the Japanese one. So even if it's frozen, it's going to make a big difference to our spending in retirement. There is a way to get around this, which is if you move back to the UK, or if you move to a country that does have this kind of agreement, your pension would automatically be updated to whatever the current level was from the frozen. It would be unfrozen basically and moved up to whatever the current level was. And of course, these rules may change in the future. Another consideration if you're married is that your spouse would not be able to inherit your pension or get any kind of benefit from your pension if you passed away. So how can you apply to this? How can you figure out if you're eligible to do it? The easiest way is to go online to the gov.uk website, find form CF83, which is the kind of application form, fill it in, send it in, and see what they say. It can be a bit of a pain applying. Do go to the RetireJapan forum, check out the threads on the UK state pension, check out the most recent posts, which are talking about people's experiences recently. They do change the system every so often. You can basically apply online now, which was not the case when I did it. When I did it, you had to send them a letter, and then like 6 months later you'd get the letter back. Now you can do it online. It's a little bit quicker in some areas. Do make sure you go on the government website and you read everything. You make sure you understand the system and really think about your situation and whether it's going to be a good fit for you. You can actually call them up. There's something called the Future Pensions Centre where you can call them up and talk to them and see if it makes sense for you to make these voluntary contributions. If it does, like I said, it's one of the best investments I know of. I've been doing it for a while. I'm really glad I'm doing it. If you qualify, so you've lived in the UK, you've worked in the UK, you've got a national insurance number, I really think it's worth thinking about. But how about you? Are you paying into the UK state pension on a voluntary basis? Do you wish you could if you're not? Do let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.